What is up, guys? We are going to be working on the Bosozoku Cressida today, and we have quite a bit of progress since you guys have last seen. There's been a lot of little things and kind of meticulous stuff that I just haven't really been filming. But as you see right here, we have the side skirts in primer. These things were fully blocked. We did a little bit more glass work. There's very little that needs to be done to these things before they're 100% paint ready, but we're going to go ahead and throw them on the car. There's only one thing we need to do, and that's drill these holes that I filled up when I fiberglassed this thing entirely from the backside. So just drill a couple of the holes for the riv nuts that go into the car, and then we're going to be able to mount these things up, see how they look. From there, we're going to be working on the lip, because that's kind of the last major thing that I haven't really touched a whole lot on. As you know, we shortened this thing about 8 inches, I believe, and we did trim some of the underside. So from here, what we're going to do next is we have to make this fit up against the body nice, so we're going to have to do some glass work there. Once that dries, we're going to be able to continue prepping this entire surface for filler. From there, add the filler and start flattening all of this out. We now have both of the side skirts mounted just with 3 bolts. Usually we're gonna mount them up with 6, and just even as is, they're super sturdy. They are really not gonna go anywhere. This is so much sturdier than any like standard 240 side skirt, and they don't weigh a whole lot more. Also, I forgot to mention that we are going to be painting the underside of the side skirts and the lip and some of the other parts. So sometime in between doing the primer and then doing the final paint, we are gonna be painting the undersides of these things with a single stage matte or satin black. And that'll include stuff like the underside of the lip, inside of the fenders, underside of the hood, underside of the side skirts, inside of the flares, and then finally the backside of all of this taillight panel area. If you did notice that there is a little bit of an uneven gap here, that's because I decided to make this piece flat and not try and contour it to the flare, because the flares are the inconsistent ones, and because they have a little bit of the curves inside them, I'm not going to bother with that. I just decided to make each one of the side skirts perfectly flat from here to here, and so that goes for both sides. The flares obviously aren't 100% perfect yet, but we do have enough of a gap that we can work with it and shouldn't be too much of an issue. Moving on, we're going to start working on this front lip, and the first thing we're going to have to do is pull it off, and we're going to have to tape off all of the areas where we're going to be doing the glass work from the lip to the car to help get that gap a little bit closer. So all of this stuff is going to be taken care of, and then we're probably going to do something like we did back there and just kind of normalize all of these so it's not really trying to follow all of these different contours and everything of the flares, but we'll probably try and get it pretty close to this front kind of panel here on the Cressida itself. A little bit of a strange way to do this, but this is kind of how I thought would be the easiest and probably the best way. So obviously this thing is on its face now. What I did is I just used the blue tape to basically get the outline of where I want the fiberglass to continue to meet up with the car, and then I used this other tape just so that way it doesn't bleed over and then go into the concrete. Pretty much so that way whenever it's all cured, from there I know where to trim this back to get it as close as possible. We'll probably do a little bit of overhang into where this just the masking tape is. That way we can try and get it as close as possible, but the blue tape is pretty much exactly where the body of the car is. So from here we're just going to clean up the back side of this, or the underside, and then from there we're going to just lay some glass on there, wait till that cures. From there, like I said, we'll trim it, fit it up there. Once that's good, we can start doing all the filler work. So this is dry enough now that I'm gonna go ahead and flip this over and start sanding / prepping the top side that we're gonna use the filler on. And then I'll wait a little bit longer for that to dry, and then we'll trim it up. And then from there, we'll just prep all that, and then we can start adding some filler on this thing. So the plan here is that I'm basically going to prep this thing into maybe like 4 different sections and then do some filler work, just because there's gonna be so many different layers of filler that we're gonna have to do on here to make this thing flat. It's just gonna take a lot of time to fill in all these pits and everything. And so I figured it would be quickest and best to basically put some filler on here in one area, let it dry for a little bit, then move on to, let's say, this side, which I'm gonna do next, prep that. And by the time I'm done prepping that, this side will be dry, and I'll move on to this middle section, and then maybe we'll do this. I don't know, I just figured I'd get some filler on there, that way that can dry while I'm working on some other areas. That way we're not wasting any time while waiting for filler to dry if I were to do this entire panel. And also, if I were to try and do this whole panel, it would just be a massive amount of mixing at once, and I don't know. We're gonna try and figure this out. I've never really done anything quite this large before, and I'm sure a lot of people haven't, so I don't really know the direction to take on this thing, but I'm sure this will work perfectly fine. With a little bit more tweaking, this thing is pretty much fitting up exactly how we wanted it. We are gonna have to trim a little bit more of this and just kind of mess around with it, make sure it fits perfectly. But I'm not really gonna worry about that right now. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to prep each one of these kind of corners that I didn't get a lot of filler on entirely. That way we can get some filler on there. From there, we're gonna start using the air file to just get the top side flattened out. We now finally have this lip fully blocked and ready for primer. We have done a lot of filler work just to get this thing remotely flat, and we also did a bunch of fiberglass work to reinforce a lot of this. We did another layer of fiberglass on the inside all the way across here just to strengthen it up a little bit. We didn't add any support holding this part to here because I do want it to have some flex for if and when it hits the ground. We also put another layer of fiberglass all the way across this edge here because when we extended it, we only did it with, I think, one layer of fiberglass, and I wanted to add another just to get it a little bit thicker, and so now everything is nice and sturdy. Everything is kind of rounded off a little bit. Everything is pretty flat for the most part, but we are going to have to block and reprime the primer that we are using now. The primer we're using today is a really high build, and this is something that we'll be able to do some minor body work as well. So we only brought this thing down with 80 grit, and so yes, there's going to be a lot of scratch marks, but with this super high build, it pretty much gets rid of probably even 40 grit, honestly, or 36 grit. So pretty much we're going to be priming this entire thing, and then later down the line, I'm not sure, probably once this thing dries, we give it some time to cure, we are going to flip it back over and we're going to paint the underside with a matte black, and then we can continue doing the rest of the other things on the car, and then once we come back to this for the final paint prep of blocking the primer, and then primer after that, we'll have the nice black to kind of seal the other side. This thing looks insane right now. It has been quite a while since we started this lip, just because there's been so much going on in between doing this thing, and it's been a few days at least since we put this thing in primer, and oh my gosh, this thing was hurting my hand. And in addition to it being absolutely massive, the gun that I was using, obviously from Harbor Freight, so I can't complain too much, was like really crappy. I don't know why, but this gun that I was using was absolutely horrible compared to all of the other ones. Maybe I should have thinned it out a little bit more. We were using a super heavy build primer, and maybe I should have thinned it out, but it was just spraying like crap, and it took forever to get any sort of coverage on this thing. But right now, it is looking pretty damn good. Obviously, this still has to be blocked and then reprimered again with a little bit thinner primer, and then blocked again before it's 100% ready for paint. But this is getting us so much closer. This is one of the biggest things on this car to get done. Wasn't easy, but I got it up there. I had to pick that whole thing up above my head, turn it around, flip it around. All right, I'm gonna update you guys once this thing is outside. And then, honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to put this thing on there, at least while it's outside, not by myself. But we're at least gonna get it out here, centered with the lip on. And then from there, we'll probably finish out this video. Great timing for the rain to come, right when I gotta move both of the cars that are sensitive to weather. The Miata got wet at the last show that it was at, completely drenched, so not a big deal there. Kind of annoying though. Anyways guys, we're not gonna be able to get the lip on this thing right now. The rain comes in a little bit with the door open, and I really don't want that thing getting on the lip. We're really gonna have to just bring this thing outside, maybe once the flares are done or something, but this rain is absolutely ridiculous. It is absolutely pouring, and unfortunately this thing cannot be outside the way it is without having at least some sort of sealer on all of the bare filler. Anyways guys, that about wraps it up for today's video. If you guys are interested in helping out the progression of my builds, go ahead and pick yourself up some merchandise. We have the Bozo merchandise, and then we also have some Miata merchandise as well. Anyways guys, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed, and peace out.